So, good afternoon, ladies and gents, and welcome to Persuasive Communication and Rhetoric. I am super excited to be back with you. I'm hoping you are fine, healthy, well, and ready for the next semester of your first master's year. I was very, very excited regarding this subject, and I have possibly told it to you that rhetoric is my field of research, and I wrote my dissertation. I wrote my master's actually in verbal rhetoric, and then I wrote my dissertation in visual rhetoric, and yet I was suffering a hell of a lot with planning the whole course and putting it together and doing it right. Why, you might ask? That you must be happy to have been selected for this subject, because this is your field of research, finally something you are actually aware of a little bit. And then it turns out that with those ladies and gents that we had been working with for a very, very long time, before the master started, we had already had a bunch of rhetorical courses. We had media rhetoric before, in which I taught all the fun stuff, and I'm very tempted to do a little bit of repetition, not much, just a little, regarding fallacies, which are those argumentative units which are not necessarily just or fair, but they're very, very effective, like appealing to pity, appealing to high authority, attacking the person, or being like an ad hominem, like attacking the opponent instead of the argument, circular argumentation, all the fun stuff and all the bits and bobs. But we had already devoted a full-on course to this one. And then in the second year still, we had a full-on course for visual rhetoric. And I started thinking that persuasive communication and rhetoric, I had already taught verbal rhetoric to these ladies and gents, and I had already taught visual rhetoric before we started our studies, and I was struggling. But I came up with something super fun, which requires approximately 10 slides of repetition, and I'm hoping that it's going to be good for everyone. We might be still kind of touching up on previous studies because it's important, it's inevitable to talk about it, but I came up with something that I find entertaining, useful, and very much holistic. So let me show you the plan, then I will be speaking to you about the requirements, and then we will get started with learning today, just as usual. So what will we talk about? First of all, within rhetoric, I created a bunch of subtopics, because nowadays rhetoric itself is not only accepted as verbality. Before all that, and I will be speaking about it to you, rhetoric could not have been imagined as anything else than speech. And they were really much opposing the notion of visual rhetoric, for example. They said that images could not be arguing because they are just decorative or ornamental elements besides a text. And only a text can have a proposition, can have an allegation, a statement in it. And an image is just vague and ambiguous, and there is no way you can actually find out what a picture wants, and it does not have the grammatics and semiotics as verbality does. And it was just not accepted until the 20th century. And so wasn't oral rhetoric, and so wasn't procedural rhetoric, and the rest of it. So I wanted a little bit of knocking, and I'm hoping some drilling will follow. Excuse me for the noises. It's been here for 3 weeks, I think. So first we will talk about media rhetoric, which I find very much needed to talk about how the media, as our main field of major, argues, and how it's trying to make you, aware or think in a certain way, or create an image of the world that they want you to create. Then afterwards we will be talking about political rhetoric, and it's still happening today. I'm thinking about it, how a political campaign is put together, what a good slogan looks like, what a good logo looks like, and I want to ask your participation in certain creations as well. I'm very curious what sort of a creativity you can show in this one. We will talk very briefly about visual rhetoric as well, and I will want to show you how pictures argue, because we have had the big pictorial turn in the 20th century, and we have started to communicate in images. Practically, we don't even text that much, or whenever we need to express ourselves, like on Facebook as well. We don't really use Facebook that much anymore, I'm thinking, because of Instagram and TikTok. But we just tend to communicate in images. It's much easier to post an image and then have like a very short caption. And that's what the news does as well. Like, you've got a big image in the news and then 3 lines that like this and that happened. So we have had the visual turn. It's like an absolute visual culture that we live in, and we're communicating in images. It's much easier to prove something. Like, you don't say that, sorry, I'm not coming to the party tonight because it's quarantine and there's nobody. No, I don't mean that. So I'm not coming to the party tonight because I've got a high fever. You will just send a text message of yourself lying in bed, and then it's just going to be way more persuasive because it shows that you are really unwell. You know, it can be a picture from last year as well, even though, but still, it seems more trustworthy. And so spatial rhetoric, how spaces communicate, and you probably have never thought of spaces, but there are very, very exciting communicational and rhetorical kind of meanings behind it. If you think about the spaces in Building C, and I'm not sure if you managed to enter Building C and Building E at our university in Hungary. At the university, you will find that Building C has got way more modern spaces than Building E, which is a more classical, traditional, very much kind of showing the, you know, like a university style. The other one is like a mall, a shopping center. So it's got different spaces that it tries to convey to us, and a different kind of communication. And I found it extra exciting what a couple of very, very precious students of mine came up with, because they did a presentation. You will have to do presentations at the end of the semester. They came up with the rhetoric of spaces. They wanted to elaborate on that. And they introduced the 3 metro lines in Hungary. Metro Line 1, which was built in the 1800s and which was very much this... you know, like this very fancy, that's the fancy line, which is going through, you know, like the Andrássy Street and the most beautiful places, and how it communicates. And then they were showing Metro Line number 2, which was this very much... the communist line, practically going to Moscow Square, which is now called Szélkámán Square, and showing that, like, in every kind of step or whenever the metro stops in the underground, there was something like workers with X's on their backs and stuff like that, either like stones or statues or paintings on the wall, and it was really crazy. And then they showed Metro Line number 3, which is going from where does it go? It goes to Kőbánya Kispest, I think. This is also like the working line as well, and how it has been renovated and what sort of kind of new rhetorical style was given to them. I'm very much tempted to show you that presentation because it was just gorgeous. So spaces also communicate, and they also give you a very exciting insight. If you think about the side of Pest and side of Buda in here, completely different communication. One of them is the high-class, mountainy, detached house kind of style, and the other one, Pest, is going to be very much the, you know, like the busy kind of sparkling life, nightlife, blocks of houses, very little green, lots of concrete. So it's just like, it's exciting to think about. Oral rhetoric is going to be something that we will talk about musical rhetoric in here as well, and how music without speech can have an extra impact on you and can make you feel somewhat or feel in a sense, or think in a sense as well. We will talk about procedural rhetoric, how the procedures are done within rhetoric, and the rhetoric of silence. When we say something, that's rhetorical. When we don't say something, that's also rhetorical. The rhetoric of silence is also highly culture dependent. In certain cultures, silence is much more valued, and you know, in the European and Western cultures, we often say like, oh, that was an awkward silence and it was just uncomfortable and stuff like that. In certain cultures, silence is good as gold, and if you don't keep in silence, then that's awkward and that's disrespectful towards the elderly or towards this and that and that. So it's going to be exciting, in my opinion. Then we go over to persuasion after breaking down rhetoric. and how persuasion goes. So the first unit is going to be very much fragmented. Then persuasion, what is that, how to imagine it, what sort of notions need to be differentiated between persuasion, convincing, forcing, manipulation, how these function and in what ways do they kind of build up persuasion and stuff like that. And then I thought of talking about the rhetoric of smells, which is going to be exciting. Certain companies use the same smells or like scents or stuff in order to kind of charm you into their buildings and in order to, make you shop. For example, Zara, if you have been there, I'm sure you do have those in your country as well. Zara has got a very special scent, and Stradivarius too. And there's a new shoe shop, not very new shoe shop, I think it's Polish, CCC. It has got a very specific scent as well, and they're actually spritzing it around in the shop every now and then, so that as soon as you smell that, you are like, that's that shop, and it's a good feeling. And it seems like smells are one of the greatest impacts on memories, for example, good memories and bad memories as well, and they do have a huge impact on our thinking. Now, the rhetoric of religions, I thought of actually implementing this one because it seems like there are more and more apps online, and I do follow a bunch of them, and I have seen a bunch of them, and it seems like there is daily prayers applications, and it seems like Instagram is flashing up all kinds of religious kind of bits and bobs, and it turns out that after I had read a research about it, it turned out that the Christian and the Muslim religions, and especially the Muslim one, they are excellent at helping you out with your daily prayers. And because the Muslim religion is really strict with your daily number of prayers as well, they are a good reminder as well. There is like an application which will remind you that now you need to stop and focus on God. And the Christian religion has also got a bunch of these. Turns out that the largest religious figures, such as the Pope, has got an Instagram as well. Many people find it weird, and they also find it like losing the holy kind of insight to religion. So I'm wondering what you think when big religious figures also enter the field of new media. And I thought this could be a very exciting territory. Rhetoric of music, I mentioned it with oral rhetoric, how sound can have an impact on you. We will elaborate on this more. The rhetoric of robotization, oh my god, this is going to be exciting. Robotization is on our neck, it's just coming on, and I'm wondering, and I will be asking our ladies and gents whether we have touched up on this one or spoken about this one. I don't think so. It's the thing is, very briefly, is that we used to have sex robots all around, which used to be these dolls rather, which are just sitting on your couch, and instead of your wife, it's mainly men using them. Instead of your wife, you are like attracted to an absolute a doll, really. But nowadays, robots have kind of, like humanoid robots, have kind of gone through such a development that it's no longer a sex robot, they call them, it's a companion robot. And that's going to be very, very, very exciting. Turns out that the robots nowadays are based on artificial intelligence. They will get connected to your internet or your search history and stuff like that, and they will check on what you have been searching for. And if you checked up the last night's match, let's say, or football match or something, they will start a conversation with you. They're like, hey, how have you enjoyed that one? Or did you enjoy whatever, Barcelona winning it or something? And it seems like they're very much caring for you, and it already caused a bunch of problems when people, especially in Japan and in the Far East, they were using it as for a sexual purpose, but now they're using it for conversational purposes. They're using it for all kinds of things, and they will never be, they will not hurt you, and they will not be ordering you around to take out the trash or to do the cleaning or the washing, because they will be, super chill and pretty, and they will never get old or fat or ill, or they will never die. And they are at the moment causing 30% of divorces within Japan, or at least they say that they have got an impact on it because people are using these things. And I will show you what sort of a robots I'm talking about. Of course, super pornified, very large heart and soul, if you understand what I mean. And it's just a problem. And they have got a rhetoric style to them nowadays, and it's just, it's everything. And last but not least, we will be talking about virtual rhetoric, which is going to be exciting as well. How virtual spaces communicate, and what, within virtuality, it does not have like a length anymore, it's got a depth, and it's just going to be kind of creating a non-real reality, and it's going to be used in many ways and styles and everything. Okay, this is the plan. I'm hoping you are super excited, because I tried to kind of move away from the fallacies, move away from film analyses, move away from this and that, which we have already had in the BA. I wanted to come up with something that is fragmented, maybe a little superficial, because we are now not digging deep into rhetoric and how it is built up and what and blah, 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 because we have already done that with some parts of the class. So I thought, let's make like a super large surface. I'm trying to recommend you topics of research as well, maybe for your thesis. These are all excellent topics that you could elaborate on if you were interested in rhetoric, and that's it practically. Regarding the requirements of the course, it's going to be just the same as last semester, apart from the fact that now we are not cut off half. So that's great, isn't it? That now every single week, unless it's like a spring holiday or an intensive week, we will have a lesson, okay? And it's not going to be blogged in the end into the intensive week or anything. No, we're not meeting then. We are having a weekly course until the end of the semester, and then we will have an exam period. Now, within the weekly courses, it's going to be the same. I will be doing YouTube videos for you. We will be having the Premiere function. We will be chatting, and then we will move into Microsoft Teams and talk about whatever we have heard. And then lastly, we will have presentations, team presentations in the end of the semester. You will need to get into groups, once again, just as last semester. Choose a topic, one of these, and elaborate on that in a 20-minute presentation. So if you wanted to choose the rhetoric of religion, spatial rhetoric, check out maybe not the metro lines because it has already been done, but how European parliaments, what they look like all over, and choose 5 countries and see what sort of kind of houses they actually have within architectural rhetoric and spatial rhetoric or something, Or you could just choose robot rhetoric and check out what sort of crazy porno robots there are. Please don't do that, but you can. I will. Rhetoric of smells. You can just choose a bunch of really, really exciting companies and check out what sort of like tips and tricks they are using. For example, we also know that car companies, whenever they have got like a car, which is like, I'm not sure what you call it, it's like a trial car, whenever you go into the shop, it is showcased, it is there, and sometimes people can sit into it and try it out and just, have a feel of it. And because it has been standing there for a year practically, or maybe 2 years or something, because it's a model car, it loses the new scent or the new smell. And for that reason, they sometimes spritz in the smell of leather or fresh sort of kind of scents as well, so that when you sit into that car, you feel that it's a new car, even though most of the times it's not, because they are not going to be sacrificing a bunch of cars, so that people get in and out and try it out for a circle and do this, do that. So, it's just like, you can choose any kind of very, very super exciting topics as well. And then we will have an oral exam at the end of the semester or year. Practically, it's going to be just the same as now. It's going to be in Teams, unless there is some changes or something. But at the moment, we are preparing to have a full-on online semester. Some of you are not even in Hungary, so I'm not sure if legislation changes what we will be doing. But at the moment, whatever we are preparing for is going to be online education, and we are very much up for it. Holy Christ, it's 10... What? Oh, I've been talking for 20 minutes for the introduction. Okay, no worries, it's okay. Let's move on, and this is going to be a little bit of repetition, ladies and gents. For those of you who have already been here, I'm sorry. I just want to talk very briefly about the history of rhetoric, and then we are moving on into media rhetoric. And if we have got the time, which I don't think so because I was way too excited to introduce the subject, political rhetoric as well. Okay, so majority of times, which is really exciting, rhetoric is imagined as a woman. You can hear it from the Greek word rhetorica, also Latin word as well. They both use it in both languages, and we can hear it that it's got an R sound in the end, so it's like a female kind of notion. And they almost or always imagined it as one of the ladies of the 7 liberal arts, septem artis liberalis. They imagine her as a very majestic lady, as you can see her in the image. They say that rhetoric is often pictured like this. So it's a lady who has got her leg rested on top of a book. She has got a crown on her head. She has got a sword in her hand. And she's like a very powerful lady. I'm not sure if you know of any other kind of disciplines or territories which are portrayed as a male or a female. Which I can think of is going to be Justitia, for example, the Lady of Justice, and that's like my sister. She finished law, and I often saw it on her book covers as well. That Justitia, which is going to be justice itself, is often portrayed as a lady who has got her eyes covered, and she has got like I think a sword in one hand and a scale in another hand, so that she's unbiased. You know, her eyes are covered up, and the scales are like showing that like she's going to decide in favor of one party, but she's also a fighter. So majority of times it's portrayed like that. I'm also thinking about whom else. I'm thinking about the guy carrying the whole globe on top of his shoulder. Isn't it I think it's a male, very muscular one as well, Atlas. And I'm thinking about that man, which is like portrayed as the father of the world and geography itself, the portrayal of that. But I'm still thinking about more. But we will kind of keep it for later. You can help me out with this one. So in here, the rhetoric is actually portrayed as a lady, and she's quite sensitive about her age, and she's got a good right to this, because she likes to stay young and fresh. Rhetoric is, all over, in every century and every single period and all periods. She's 2,500 years old, so she needs to know the secret to youth and kind of juvenility. And these secrets within rhetoric is going to be wisdom and mystery. They say that rhetoric needs to build upon these two kind of notions. Wisdom, it needs to be rational, smart, creative, and also mysterious a little bit, not playing with open cards, but being creative in your ways, as in showing your positions and your points of views. And it's just like these are the two things that will always keep rhetoric young, and yourself as well, and me. So we're super young always. Rhetoric likes to talk about herself as well. It's a very much flashing kind of a discipline. It's something that likes to express herself whenever she can. And for that reason, and we will talk about it later as well, it is considered to be an ability and proficiency at the same time. So it's something you learn and at the same time you are born with. At least that's what the ancients say, that rhetoric is something that is an ability, you are born with that, and you can make it perfect by practicing it. So practically ability and proficiency. Of course, the ancient ones, such as Cicero, and many of them believe that they were born with this talent, and they needed practice just to be showing their excellence. In my personal opinion, you need to be born with this. So you can practice a lot, and you can become good. But if you've got an extra creativity for this, an extra bravery or courage to stand out in front of a public in order to kind of sell yourself and want to show yourself, I think that comes from the inside. And then anything can be developed by learning the theory behind it, learning some good tips and tricks behind it. But I think it's very important that you're born with some sort of a talent in this. Okay, they also say that it's some sort of an art. Rhetoric is part of the 7 arts, And also they say that it's some sort of a theory as well as a practice. We will kind of build on this notion a lot, because we will see that it's a theory, definitely. We will learn a lot of theory. But at the same time, it does have a very practical, pragmatic side to it. And also, it is a cornerstone of eloquence. You can see that back in the days, they could only imagine rhetoric as being verbal, so eloquence was the number one place where rhetoric was being used. Now, how did it start, and what was the main issue with rhetoric, and what are the two different approaches to rhetoric? We can differentiate, ladies and gents, between Roman and Greek rhetoric, and the styles of Roman and Greek rhetoric are going to be inherently different. So, and I'm curious which one you prefer. So it all started historically. It started off from the kind of coasts of Syracuse, which is nowadays Sicily, practically, Syracusa, and in the 5th century before Christ. And practically, this is where they first started having like some sort of, ideas and notions about rhetoric. And then it kind of went all over to Athens, which was the cradle of democracy and the cradle of eloquence, practically. Now, rhetoric actually gave the foundation and the establishment of the Greek democracy, practically. So rhetoric was the number one important issue regarding creating a democracy, and rhetoric became the assistant of assembly and court because it was just a part of forensic speeches and political speeches. Why? Let's see how rhetoric became a political kind of notion, and a notion which led up to democracy, the Greek democracy. Now, it all started with the reign of the tyrants, and I'm not sure if you remember this from historical studies as well, but I do remember a bunch of tyrants such as Draco and Solon, Pisistratus, Cleisthenes, and parts like that, or people like that. And I think Draco was when, I think it was 621 before Christ, and then we're going, towards Christ. So they were there, and they were really much cruel, of course, and they did like a conflict of property demands. They kind of triggered it. How? It all functioned just as communism did within Hungary and all the post-Soviet nations, that the tyrant took the lands of the people, the same as communism practically, took the lands of the people they were opposing with, and then the tyrant gave it to his own supporters. Okay, same thing happened in Hungary when we had the Communist Party, took the lands, took the houses, took everything of the peasants and the intellectuals, and then gave it to their own working class, a party member kind of friends, and people who were supporters of them. Same thing happened in Greece. Okay, now the landowners and their lands had been taken away and given to the tyrant's people. And after the failure of the tyranny, maybe, the tyrant died or got sent away or got executed or something, in very lucky cases, the landowners wanted their fields back, which belonged to them for centuries, or to their families, Now, the problem was that the tyrant's people didn't want to give it back, and for that reason, they went to court. Now, ladies and gents, I hope you notice that an institution of the court already existed back in the days, which is crazy, like Athens was so super developed back then. But so there was a courtroom and there was a judge, but there was no such a thing as, oh God, I don't have the vocabulary. Is it like the advocate and the attorney, the two lawyers who are defending and attacking each other? I'm hoping I'm saying good things. And so there was only a judge, and people needed to go there into the courtroom and defend themselves. And they needed to give a speech on behalf of themselves, saying that, like, Mr. Judge, okay, this is not definitely the way they address them, but like, my land which belonged to our family for centuries, had been taken away from me, and I would like to get it back. And then the other person said that, like, oh, I have been legally given it by the tyrant, and I'm not giving it back. So this is how rhetoric all started, and they needed strategic arguments, logical setups, rational elements. It was all really high-class professional, yes, and efficient and just really good rhetoric indeed. As opposed to the Roman rhetoric. And how did the whole story of Roman rhetoric start? I think you're going to laugh, because this Greek rhetoric was like really, it's got a story to it and a very kind of noble cause that, like, I want to get my field back and I want to get my land back and I want to make justice for myself. Now, Roman rhetoric was different. It's not like a holy cause in here. It all started with Cicero. Cicero wanted to apply for the consul title, and I'm not sure if you have learned Latin, and I'm not sure how many of you have actually learned Latin, but there was this speech of Marcus Tullius Cicero, so this one, who was talking to Catilina. He was the consul back in the days, and it starts off like, I did learn this in Latin, like, quousque tandem abutera Catilina patientia nostra. It's something like, how long do you intend to still abuse our patience, Catilina? And it was the biggest political speech ever. So he wanted to kind of make Catilina, the person in the consul position, to be weakened, to look really, dodgy and corrupt and everything. And Cicero wanted to take his position. Now, this is how rhetoric started. Cicero wanted to get the position, the consul position, and for that reason, he started doing anything he possibly could. He was an underdog because he didn't come from a consul family, and that was like a miss, that was a problem, but he did come from an intellectual family. He was super charming. He was also, like, in his rhetoric, but he also considered himself super charming for the looks as well. By, like, statues and stuff like that, he looks quite handsome, apart from the fact that he was approximately 150 centimeters tall, just as everybody in his time. But he was super, playing on rhetoric as much as he could. He was dressing up nice. He never took a step out on the streets alone. He would always go in a crowd so that he would show his popularity. It's just like the cool girls and the cool guys in high school who are never on their own. They're always going in folks, because it shows popularity. He was promising everything to the public. He was super charming. He was highlighting in how much of an intellectual he is and how much of a many generation intellectual family he comes from. And so it was way less argumentative. The Roman rhetoric is not really strategical argumentation, not really about the good arguments or the fair arguments or the just arguments. It's not. It's more narrative. It's all about storytelling. It's all about my fabulous self, that I'm trying to be kind of sharing you and blessing you with. So, it's all about personality, identity, social status. So the Roman rhetoric indeed is it's trying to kind of play on the relationship between the speaker and the audience, and it's just trying to kind of charm you. I'm not sure which one you think is better. The logical Greek argumentation that, like, it was my land, I want it back, or the I am fabulous, vote for me kind of a rhetoric. I think a good mix is the good one. But what we can see nowadays, especially in political rhetoric, majority of times it's going to be rather the Roman one, in advertising the Roman one, in marketing the Roman one. So it's not necessarily you need this 155th jumper in your closet. That's not a logical argument. It's all going to be like, how fabulous you will look, and Rihanna is also wearing this jumper, and you will be just rich and famous, and, if you buy this, and, it's just fantastic. This is, I think, Roman rhetoric is way more in the foreground nowadays, rather than Greek rhetoric. It creates a value community. The Roman rhetoric is very much all about community building. And if you think about it, marketing does the same. You've got the IKEA family. Just because we buy the same table, we are a family. Or the Pepsi generation. We drink the same cola and we will be the same generation, no matter how or what sort of an age we belong to. It's all about this, They're trying to build a community. If you buy the same thing, we're family. We're not even strangers to each other. We're not good friends. We're family, just because we buy the same wardrobe. Crazy. Right. So the oldest campaign strategy, and this one still belongs to Marcus Tullius Cicero and his story. Sorry, sometimes I pronounce things in Hungarian. So Cicero and how he wanted to get this position, it was very much built up by his brother. So when Marcus wanted to kind of apply for the consul status, Quintus, who was his brother, I hope you understand, there's Marcus Tullius Cicero and then Quintus Tullius Cicero, so these are brothers, and Marcus wanted to go for the position and Quintus wanted to help him. So Quintus was excellent at creating a strategy, and he provided the basis for campaign planning and for campaign communication. You know, it's crazy, centuries ago. So he actually wanted to help his brother Marcus to win the consul elections, and so he actually created this very little manual, applicant's manual, which was written in 64 before Christ. Yeah, 64 before Christ. So it was absolutely crazy. It is still available in English as well, and in Hungarian as well. I read it in Hungarian, and it was actually in our library, in the Corvinus library as well. So if you wanted to, if you could check it out, it's like very little. This little book, 24 pages or something, and it's horrifying how 64 before Christ can be applied to the 21st century, 2021 now as well, and how it's crazy how Quintus got it so super right. How a person within Rome could win the elections and what sort of tips and tricks he actually included. Yeah, this is the book, Hogyan nyerjük meg a választásokat, How to Win the Elections, and this is the little handbook of applicants, of political applicants, and I find it just amazing. Really, it's just absolutely fantastic. Okay, so what kind of tips and tricks does the book include? First of all, think about what kind of community you are, what you are applying for, and who you are. So practically you need to build up your identity. Whom you want to sell as, and to whom you want to sell yourself, who is going to be your target audience. What sort of a community do you want to build, and how do you want to, or what do you want to call yourself as, and how do you want to start creating the whole campaign? It's very, very important that you precisely kind of name who your audience will be. As a homo novus, so practically like new man, you have no easy situation, but not only your ancestors' virtues, but their sins have become known too. So he said that, like, okay, that as a new man, you don't have a history and you cannot say to the public that, like, oh, I have done this and that noble thing, so vote for me once again. But you can say that your ancestors, so the person you're running against, they have got virtues, but they have got a lot of sins as well. So practically, Quintus started giving tips and tricks to his brother how to be pointing out the weakness. This is what did I want to say? Enemy creation. That's what I'm trying to spit out. So practically, you need to create an enemy, and your ancestor, the other person, needs to kind of, your opponent needs to kind of be shown as a super negative character. Make your opponent's position clear and develop a strategy for it. So practically your opponent needs to be stripped down and kind of purified and tell that, like, this person wants this, it has already done all this negativity, now this strategy is the wrong one. Never be seen on the street alone. Loneliness is a misfortune. So practically, if you go out onto the streets lonely, you seem like a loser. You don't seem like a very high-power politician if nobody is admiring your fantastic self when you go out onto the streets. Make sure the entire application is gorgeous, shining, sparkling, and kind to the people. See this, ladies and gents? It is already saying that the political campaign has to be visualized. There has to be, like, billboards, campaigns. It has to be sparkling. It has to have a logo, a slogan, something fantastic, sparkling, something that will kind of stick to the mind or into the minds of the people. And I think they were really good at that. There are 3 things that cause people to do good: kindness, hope, and spiritual compassion. This is what Quintus said as well. So practically, if you seem to be kind, if you give them hope that things can change, that you're going to make, let's say, Rome great and a large and fantastic kind of community and the whole of Italy a fantastic nation. Give them spiritual kind of compassion and give them a community that they can belong to. It's everything to the people, and Quintus said it 64 before Christ. By promising, you can strengthen the faith of your supporters, and later on, at most, you do not have to live up to your promises. Isn't this crazy? Half or more than half of the political kind of promises that a political party lists before the elections never gets realized. At least half, but maybe more. In here, that's what Quintus says. Just keep promising, and if you cannot keep it, no worries. Isn't this crazy? Another one, everybody would want you to lie, not to deny your request. Yeah, absolutely. So if a person comes up to you with a request, you have to promise. You have to keep giving hope and say that, like, yes, of course, we will pay so much attention on this issue. It's going to happen, and it's not, but that's how it goes. You have to be present not just in Rome and in the forum, but people in the countryside, and I think it puts a very bad name for people in the countryside. As a countryside person, I'm entirely hurt, but it says people in the countryside already think of themselves as your friends if we know their name. So, this is kind of degrading in my opinion, but what it says is that if you not only do the campaign in the capital, but also go around and give yourself a good name and learn the people's name and learn their problems and keep promising to them and showing them, and back in the days it was large, it's maybe still is large with the television of course and with modern media, they don't need to go village by village to show themselves, the candidates. But still, many candidates actually go on a country trip. And here in Hungary as well, our largest political kind of figures, they still, I'm not sure how it is in your country, but they still go around and kind of show their campaign and talk to the people in the countryside as well, and they will be happy with that. Quintus said there are 3 types of enemies: the ones you have hurt, so people who don't like you, the ones who do not like you for no reason, they may be jealous of you or hate you because you are in a more advantageous situation, and the close friends of your rivals, so practically Catilina's friends. So actually Quintus built up a strategy in each kind of type's favor as well, and he said that the first one, you need to be acting conscientiously and diligently in their affairs too. So if you hurt someone, you need to show that they are super important to you. The second one, you need to be promising favors to them. So if they don't like you, you need to keep just, doing things for them as well. And the third enemy can also be won by expressing goodwill and appreciation towards your rival. So practically saying that your rival is this and that, it's not always a good strategy. Sometimes you need to admit that your rival party is excellent and is not bad at all. And that's what Marcus actually said, Marcus Tullius Cicero. Although our nature has the greatest impact on us, it seems that in a few months of applying to a political position, pretending can defeat nature. So no matter what sort of nature you have, no matter what sort of opinions you have of people, or maybe behaviors you've got, now pretending that something is important to you, their cause is crucial to you, you're super interested in the problem of that person in the countryside who lost their fence or cow or pig or something, you have to prove that, or you have to pretend that it's okay. This is Roman rhetoric, ladies and gents. A lot of pretending, a lot of sparkling, really sugar-coated beauty behind it. And the Greek one is way more... Aristotle said that rhetoric is all about seeking the truth. This is not the truth. This is hiding the truth. And this gave a really bad name to rhetoric indeed. So we will talk about it later. Okay, ladies and gents, I think... Yes, we've mentioned this, that the applicant's manual described the principles and the campaign planning, and I think the main issue in here is that it's just as valid nowadays as it was a bunch of centuries ago, 64 before Christ. I think it's scary how much we haven't developed, or how much rhetoric is eternal, or how much people never change, or I'm not sure what the conclusion of today's class could be. But that's where we are continuing from next week. We will talk about political rhetoric in depth and media rhetoric, and how the fame and fortune of rhetoric kind of decreased because it gave this kind of a story, gave it a bad name, and how the media revived it later on. So keep your eyes peeled, stay tuned, and I'm hoping to see you next week, and I'm hoping you've enjoyed the first lecture. And see you in Teams in a moment. Let's go. Bye-bye.